Once upon a time in ancient Greece, more than 2,000 years ago, there lived a man whose ideas changed the way people think about life, truth, and education. His name was Plato. He wasn't born rich, but he wasn't poor either. He was born in a city called Athens, a place full of thinkers, artists, and warriors. Imagine walking through the streets of Athens in those days. The sound of people debating in the marketplace, the smell of fresh bread from street vendors, and the view of marble temples shining in the sun. It was a place where people asked big questions. What is good? What is justice? What does it mean to live a happy life? Plato grew up surrounded by those questions. From a young age, Plato loved learning. He asked questions about everything. When others saw the world, he wanted to understand why it was the way it was. If you had met young Plato, you might have found him sitting quietly under an olive tree, lost in thought. He didn't want to just live, he wanted to know what life truly meant. Can you relate to that feeling? That deep curiosity about life? If you can, you already share something with Plato. Repeat after me, I am curious. I love to learn. I want to understand the world. Plato's first dream, however, wasn't to be a philosopher. He wanted to be a poet. He wrote poems and plays, and he admired the great heroes of Greek legends. But destiny had something else in mind. When he met a man named Socrates, everything changed. Socrates was not like anyone else. He didn't teach by giving answers. He taught by asking questions. He would stop people on the street and ask things like, "What is courage?" or "What is truth?" At first, people laughed at him, but then they began to think deeply. His questions made people realize how little they truly knew. Plato was fascinated. He started following Socrates everywhere, learning from his questions, listening to his conversations, and discovering a new way of thinking. Socrates believed that the truth was already inside us, we just needed to bring it out by questioning ourselves. This idea became the heart of Plato's philosophy later. Now, let's pause for a quick practice. Can you say this sentence aloud? The truth is inside me. Try it again. The truth is inside me. Beautiful. That idea will guide us through Plato's story. But Plato's world wasn't easy. Athens was going through difficult times. There were wars, political fights, and corruption. People were losing faith in justice and goodness. Socrates, Plato's beloved teacher, was put on trial. He was accused of corrupting the youth and disrespecting the gods. Plato was shocked. How could a man who taught people to think be punished for it? Socrates was sentenced to death. He calmly accepted his fate and drank poison in front of his students. Plato never forgot that moment. It broke his heart, but it also shaped his purpose. He promised himself that he would continue Socrates' work and search for truth, no matter what. Have you ever lost someone who inspired you? Someone who made you see the world differently? Think about them for a moment. Remember how they made you feel motivated, alive, thoughtful. That's how Plato felt about Socrates. His death became Plato's reason to live more deeply, to question everything, and to build a better world through knowledge. After Socrates' death, Plato left Athens. He traveled for years to Egypt, to Italy, and beyond. He met scholars, priests, and mathematicians. He studied science, politics, and spirituality. He wanted to learn from every culture, every teacher, every tradition. Imagine him standing before the pyramids of Egypt, listening to wise priests speak about the soul and eternity. Imagine him in Italy, learning about numbers and harmony from the followers of Pythagoras. Plato was collecting wisdom from around the world, just like a traveler collecting treasures of knowledge. Now let's practice some useful words. Repeat after me. Wisdom, good. It means deep understanding. Philosophy, excellent. It means the love of knowledge. Justice, perfect. It means fairness or doing what is right. These are words that Plato cared about more than anything. When Plato finally returned to Athens, he was no longer just a student. He was ready to teach. But he didn't want to teach in a normal school. He wanted a place where young minds could grow through conversation and curiosity. So, he founded a school called the Academy, the first university in the Western world. Can you imagine that? The world's first organized place for higher learning. People came from all over Greece to learn from him. In his school, students didn't just memorize facts. They discussed, debated, and discovered. One of his students was a young man named Aristotle, who later became one of the greatest thinkers in history. So Plato inspired Aristotle, and Aristotle inspired many others. The chain of knowledge continued, and you, dear listener, are part of that same chain today, learning English through the story of a man who believed that knowledge is the path to freedom. Let's pause again and reflect. Repeat after me slowly. Learning makes me free. Try it again with confidence. Learning makes me free. Yes, that's the spirit. Plato wrote many books, but they were not ordinary books. They were written as dialogues, conversations between characters discussing deep ideas. Through these dialogues, Plato explored questions like, what is love? What is justice? What is the soul? And how should we live? His writing wasn't just about philosophy, it was about life itself. He wanted people to think, to question, to understand themselves, and to live better. Let's imagine something together. You are sitting under a bright blue sky in the gardens of Plato's Academy. You hear students debating, birds singing, and Plato speaking with a calm, wise voice. He says, the greatest victory is to conquer yourself. What do you think he meant? Maybe he meant that before you can change the world, you must understand and control your own thoughts, emotions, and desires. Let's practice another sentence together. I can control my mind. I can change my life. Say it again. I can control my mind. I can change my life. Wonderful. You are already learning the way Plato wanted people to learn, through reflection and repetition. As Plato taught, knowledge was not about memorizing. It was about awakening the soul. He believed we all have a kind of inner light that can grow brighter through learning and kindness. He said, education is the kindling of a flame, not the filling of a vessel. What a beautiful thought. Education should light your heart, not just fill your head. So, as we reach the end of this part of the story, remember this: Plato's journey began with curiosity, grew through pain, and bloomed into wisdom. He turned loss into purpose and questions into discoveries. Just like you can. When you face challenges, remember Plato. When you feel lost, remember that the search for truth begins inside you. Repeat one last line before we continue. The truth begins inside me. Plato's Academy was not just a school. It was a living garden of ideas. Students walked among olive trees, discussing questions about the universe, about the meaning of love, and about how humans should live together. Imagine walking there yourself, hearing voices of young minds filled with excitement. One student might say, what is justice? Another might reply, justice means giving everyone what they deserve. Then Plato would smile gently and ask, but how do we know what someone truly deserves? That's how his teaching worked, not by giving answers, but by helping students discover answers themselves. Plato believed that real education was not about memorizing facts or repeating what teachers said. It was about awakening something deep inside you, the part of you that wants to grow, improve, and understand. He said that we all live in a kind of darkness, like people sitting in a cave watching shadows on a wall. This is one of his most famous ideas, called the allegory of the cave. Imagine this: a group of people have been chained inside a dark cave since birth. They can't turn their heads. They can only see the wall in front of them. Behind them, a fire burns, and between the fire and the prisoners, there are people walking, carrying objects. The prisoners only see the shadows of these objects on the wall. To them, those shadows are reality. Now, imagine that one day, one prisoner is set free. At first, the light hurts his eyes. He doesn't want to look at the fire, but slowly, his eyes adjust. He sees that the shadows were not real. He sees the objects, the fire, and eventually, he walks out of the cave and sees the sun. For the first time, he sees the real world bright, beautiful, and full of truth. And when he goes back to the cave to tell the others, they don't believe him. They think he's crazy because they've never seen the light themselves. This story is a symbol. Plato used it to explain that most people live in ignorance, seeing only the shadows of truth. But education, the search for wisdom, is what helps us leave the cave and see reality as it is. It's not always easy. It can be uncomfortable to face the light, but once you see it, you can never go back. Let's practice a few sentences together. Repeat after me. Knowledge is light. Again, ignorance is darkness. And one more. Education helps me see clearly. Excellent. Think about your own learning journey. Maybe you started studying English because you wanted to travel, or get a better job, or understand movies and books. But deep inside, there's something more. You want to grow. You want to see the world more clearly. You want to step out of your own cave and into the light of understanding. That's exactly what Plato believed true learning was about. Plato also believed that not everyone would understand the truth right away. Some people stay in the cave because they're afraid of change. It's a beautiful idea, isn't it? A world guided by wisdom, not greed. Plato knew it was hard to achieve, but he believed it was worth dreaming about. He said that dreams and ideals push us to become better. And even if we don't reach perfection, The effort to improve makes us noble. So if you ever feel like your goals are too big, remember Plato. He dared to dream of a perfect world. You can dream too. Let's practice with energy now. I dare to dream. I believe in a better world. I will keep improving. Excellent. Plato's teachings reached far beyond his lifetime. His ideas about justice, love, and the soul shape the way we think even today. When you talk about fairness, when you question what is right or wrong, when you search for meaning, you are following the same path that Plato began. You are part of a story that started thousands of years ago and still continues today. Before we end this part, think about this. Learning English, learning philosophy. Learning anything is not just about knowledge. It's about transformation. Every new word you learn, every idea you understand, changes you a little. It makes you wiser, more confident, more open-minded. Repeat these last sentences with me. Learning transforms me. I am growing every day. I am walking toward the light. That's how Plato would want you to feel hopeful, curious, and awake. He believed that every human soul has a light that can shine brighter with knowledge and love. And yours is shining right now. Plato's ideas spread quickly across Greece and beyond. People admired him not just for his intelligence, but for his kindness and calm wisdom. He treated his students with respect, always encouraging them to think for themselves. He often said that a good teacher doesn't tell students what to think, but teaches them how to think. Imagine sitting in the shade of the Academy's olive trees, the warm air filled with the sound of discussion, and Plato speaking softly about the power of the human mind. He might say, "Don't be afraid of being wrong. Every mistake is a step toward truth." Those words still feel true today, don't they? When you make a mistake while learning English or anything else, you're not failing, you're growing. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. Every mistake helps me learn. Again, I learn through practice. And one more. I am becoming better every day. Excellent. Plato would be proud of your attitude. Now, let's talk about one of the most beautiful ideas in Plato's philosophy, the idea of the soul. Plato believed that every person has an eternal soul that existed before birth and will continue after death. He said the soul is like a charioteer driving the horses. One horse represents our noble desires, the desire for truth, kindness, and goodness. The other horse represents our wild passions, anger, greed, or fear. The charioteer, which is our reason, must guide both horses to stay balanced and on the right path. This picture is powerful because it teaches us something important. We all have different sides inside us. Sometimes we feel calm and kind, other times angry or confused. Plato believed that wisdom comes from understanding these forces and guiding them wisely. So when you feel upset or lost, remember you are the charioteer. You can guide your emotions and stay on your path. Let's say this together. I am in control of my path. My mind leads my emotions. My soul is strong and wise, perfect. You're learning both English and ancient wisdom at the same time. Plato also believed that true love was one of the highest forms of learning. But for him, love wasn't only romantic. He saw it as the force that pulls us toward beauty and truth. He called this kind of love platonic love. When you truly love something like music, art, or learning, you want to become better because of it. That love inspires you to grow. He said love begins with physical beauty, but it rises higher and higher until it reaches the beauty of the soul, and finally, the beauty of truth itself. Think about something you truly love, maybe a dream, a passion, or a goal. Feel that energy inside you. That's the same kind of love Plato spoke about. Repeat after me. Love helps me grow. Love guides me toward truth. I rise through love. Excellent. One of the most famous dialogues Plato wrote is called the Symposium. In it, several people talk about the meaning of love. One speaker says love makes people search for what they lack. Another says love is the desire for immortality through creation, whether through children, art, or great ideas. Plato suggests that love helps the soul remember what it once knew in the world of perfect forms. He believed that learning is actually remembering the soul, recalling the truth it saw before being born. Isn't that beautiful? It means that every time you understand something new, your soul is remembering an ancient truth. Every time you learn a new word in English, you are awakening that inner knowledge. Let's try this affirmation. Learning is remembering. Again, my soul already knows the truth. Now, let's talk about Plato's friendship with Dion, a man from Syracuse. Dion admired Plato and invited him to teach the young ruler of Syracuse, hoping Plato's wisdom could guide him to be a just and wise king. Plato agreed and traveled there, full of hope. But things didn't go as planned. The ruler, Dionysius was proud and suspicious. He didn't like being questioned or advised. Plato tried to teach him that true power comes from self-control and wisdom. But Dionysius preferred pleasure and control. Eventually, Plato's honesty angered the ruler, and he was forced to leave. In fact, according to some stories, he was even sold into slavery before being rescued by a friend. Imagine that one of the greatest minds in history, once a slave. But instead of becoming bitter, Plato used this experience to grow stronger. He learned that not everyone is ready for wisdom. Some people fear the truth because it challenges their comfort and pride. Yet Plato never gave up. He returned to Athens and continued to teach, believing that every conversation, every lesson, could plant a seed for the future. This part of his story teaches us resilience. Life will not always go the way you expect. People may misunderstand you, ignore you, or even hurt you. But if your purpose is clear, nothing can stop you. Just like Plato, you can rise again, wiser and stronger. Let's practice this together. I never give up. Every challenge makes me stronger. My purpose gives me strength. Wonderful. Plato's faith in education was unshakable. He once said, "The direction in which education starts a man will determine his future life." In other words, what you learn and how you think shape who you become. That's why it's so important to fill your mind with good ideas, uplifting thoughts, and meaningful knowledge. When you study English, you're not just learning a language, you're training your mind to think clearly, to communicate your ideas, and to connect with the world. Let's take a short reflection moment. Close your eyes for a second and imagine yourself in Plato's academy. You're sitting among students from all over Greece. You hear laughter, questions, and quiet discussion. The sun shines warmly, and Plato says wisdom begins in wonder. You look up at the sky and feel that you're part of something bigger than yourself. A never-ending search for understanding. Now open your eyes. Repeat after me. Wisdom begins in wonder. I am part of something bigger. My learning has purpose. Beautiful. You are now learning the way Plato dreamed people would learn, with the mind, heart, and soul working together. Before we finish this section, think about what we've learned from Plato's middle years. We learned that the soul must guide emotions, that love is the force that helps us grow, that courage means continuing even when the world misunderstands us, and that education shapes our destiny. These ideas are not just ancient, they are alive inside you right now. Repeat these final lines with strength. My soul is wise. I grow through love. I am stronger than my struggles. I am shaping my destiny. As Plato grew older, his wisdom deepened. He had seen wars, injustice, love, and loss. Yet through it all, he never stopped believing in the power of truth. Every morning, he would walk to the academy, his white robe brushing against the dust of the Athenian road, his mind full of questions. Students waited eagerly to hear him speak, not because he had all the answers, but because he helped them discover answers within themselves. Plato often reminded them, the greatest teacher is not outside you, it's inside you. Think about that for a moment. In your own learning, who is the greatest teacher? It's you, the part of you that keeps trying, that keeps asking, that keeps believing. Repeat this line with confidence. I am my own teacher. I can guide myself to knowledge. I trust my inner wisdom. Excellent. During this time, Plato began to think deeply about the connection between the soul and society. He had already imagined a perfect world in the Republic, but now he wanted to understand how people could actually live in harmony. He believed that a good society starts with good individuals. If people learn to control their desires, act with justice, and seek truth, then the community they build will also be fair and peaceful. But if people are selfish and ignorant, society will fall into chaos. He said that just as the soul has 3 parts, reason, spirit, and desire, society also has 3 parts, rulers, soldiers, and workers. The rulers must be wise, the soldiers brave, and the workers disciplined. When each part does its job well, the whole society works in balance. Isn't that an amazing way to see the world? It means that harmony outside begins with harmony inside. Let's practice this idea together. Peace begins inside me. Harmony starts in my heart. I build a better world by improving myself. Plato believed that leaders should not seek power for themselves. Instead, they should lead because they understand truth and care for others. He called this the idea of the philosopher king. Imagine a ruler who studies wisdom every day, who listens to his people, who uses power not for wealth or fame, but for justice and love. That was Plato's dream. He knew it was rare, but he believed that if even one person could rule with wisdom, the world could change. Think about your own life. You might not be a king or queen, but you are the ruler of your own choices. You decide what to think, how to act, and how to treat others. You are, in a way, the philosopher king of your own life. Let's repeat this together. I rule my life with wisdom. I choose justice and kindness. I am the leader of my destiny. Beautiful. That's the spirit Plato wanted everyone to discover. As time passed, Plato's fame grew. Students came from distant lands to study at his academy. Some were rich, others poor. Some were soldiers, others poets. But in the academy, everyone was equal before knowledge. They sat together, asked questions, and searched for understanding. It didn't matter where you came from. What mattered was your desire to learn. That is the true spirit of education. Plato often said that learning is a lifelong journey. You never reach a point where you can say, I know everything. Instead, wisdom grows like a tree. It starts small, but with care, it becomes strong and full of fruit. The fruit of that tree is kindness, patience, and understanding. So when you feel like your learning is slow, don't worry. Even Plato took years to understand the lessons of life. Every day you study, you water your tree of wisdom. Repeat after me. I am growing every day. My wisdom is a tree that never stops growing. I will keep learning with patience. One day, a young student asked Plato, Teacher, why do so many people ignore wisdom? Plato smiled and said, Because wisdom requires effort, and people love comfort. He meant that most people prefer easy answers, but truth often takes hard work. You must question, think, and reflect. But if you stay patient, the reward is peace and understanding. He told his students, the price of apathy toward public affairs is to be ruled by evil men. In other words, if good people stay silent, bad people take control. That's why he taught his students to be responsible citizens, to care about justice, truth, and the well-being of others. Think about that for a second. The world changes when people care. You don't need to be rich or famous to make a difference. You just need to act with kindness and courage. Repeat after me. I care about truth. I can make a difference. My actions matter. Plato's academy continued to thrive for many years. It became a symbol of hope, a place where knowledge and virtue walked hand in hand. But as time went on, Plato began to face the reality of human weakness. Not everyone wanted to live wisely. Some people sought pleasure, others power. Yet Plato never lost faith. He said, good people do not need laws to tell them to act responsibly, while bad people will find a way around the laws. What he meant was that true goodness comes from inside, not from rules or fear of punishment. Let's practice a few words that describe this lesson. Repeat after me. Virtue, it means moral excellence, doing what's right. Integrity, it means honesty and consistency. Justice, it means fairness. Now use them in a sentence. Virtue, integrity, and justice guide my life. Excellent. As Plato aged, he often sat quietly, watching the sunset over Athens. The golden light touched the marble walls, and he smiled softly, knowing that his ideas would live on. He once said that ideas are more powerful than armies because ideas can shape generations. He was right. His thoughts about the soul, love, justice, and knowledge are still alive today. Thousands of years later, every time you question, every time you choose kindness, you are keeping his light alive. Let's pause and breathe. Feel that connection between your heart and your mind. Say these words. Ideas live forever. I am part of a timeless story. My words and thoughts have power. Wonderful. You are doing what Plato dreamed of, learning not just to speak better English, but to think deeply, feel wisely, and live with purpose. Before we end this section, here's one more reflection. Plato taught that happiness does not come from pleasure or possessions. It comes from harmony between the mind, the heart, and the soul. When you think clearly, act kindly, and feel peacefully, you are truly happy. That is the secret he wanted the world to know. So, before we move on, repeat these final affirmations with strength and joy. True happiness comes from wisdom. I live in harmony with myself. I am at peace with who I am. My soul is my greatest treasure. Plato's influence continued to grow even as his hair turned silver and his steps slowed with age. By this time, Athens had changed in many ways. New leaders had come, wars had ended and begun again, and generations of students had passed through the gates of his academy. Yet one thing remained the same: the sound of voices questioning, debating, and discovering. The academy had become more than a school. It was a living flame of wisdom, passed from one mind to another. And at the center of that flame sat Plato, calm and radiant, his eyes still filled with curiosity. He loved to talk with his students under the blue sky. He asked them questions about everything: friendship, justice, courage, beauty, and even laughter. Tell me, he would say, What is friendship? Some would answer, it's when people care for each other. Others would say, it's when the people think alike. Plato would smile and ask, but what makes friendship last? The students would pause, think, and begin again. That's how he taught through questions that made minds come alive. Have you ever noticed how a good question can open your mind like a window? That's what Plato did every day. He didn't want people to simply believe what he said. He wanted them to see the truth with their own eyes. He believed that questioning was the first step to wisdom. So when you practice English and ask, why is it said this way? Or how can I express this better? You are already walking on Plato's path. Let's practice a few empowering lines together. I learned by asking questions. Curiosity is my strength. Every question leads me closer to truth. Excellent. Among the many things Plato wrote, one idea stood above all: the concept of the good. He said that just as the sun gives light to the eyes, the good gives light to the mind. Without the sun, we cannot see the world. Without goodness, we cannot understand truth. To him, the good was not only moral virtue, it was the source of all knowledge, beauty, and happiness. When a person's soul turns toward the good, it becomes illuminated. That light helps them live wisely and peacefully. He believed that when people act with goodness, they feel joy inside. But when they act with greed or hatred, they fall into darkness. This wasn't just philosophy, it was a guide for daily life. Imagine how different the world would be if everyone lived by that simple rule. Choose the good. Repeat this softly. I choose the good. The light of goodness shines in me. Every kind act brings more light to the world. That is the core of Plato's wisdom. One evening, as the sun was setting behind the hills of Athens, a student asked him, "Teacher, how can I live a good life?" Plato looked at the young man and said, "By making your soul as beautiful as possible." The student looked puzzled. "And how do I do that?" he asked. Plato smiled gently and said, "Through love, truth, and self-control." It's a simple answer, but also a lifelong journey. To make your soul beautiful, you must care for your thoughts as much as your body. You must feed your mind with knowledge, your heart with kindness, and your actions with honesty. When you do that, your soul shines and people around you feel that light. Let's make this idea a part of us. Repeat after me. I care for my soul. My thoughts create my reality. I live with love, truth, and balance. Wonderful. Plato often told his students that the soul becomes like the things it loves. If you love money, your soul becomes greedy. If you love power, it becomes restless. But if you love wisdom and goodness, your soul becomes calm and radiant. He believed that love shapes who we are. That's why it's important to choose carefully what you love and what you give your energy to. Think about your own life. What do you love most? What fills you with peace and inspiration? Maybe it's learning, helping others, creating something, or simply becoming a better person. Hold that feeling in your heart and say, I love what is good. I give my heart to what makes me grow. My soul becomes what I love. Now, let's explore another side of Plato's wisdom, his thoughts about balance. He believed that a good life is not about extremes. Too much pleasure makes the soul lazy. Too much pain makes it hard. Wisdom is the middle way, the path of moderation. He compared life to music. The most beautiful songs are made when harmony exists between high and low notes. Likewise, the most beautiful life is one of balance. When you feel overwhelmed, when life feels too heavy or too fast, remember Plato's advice. Take a deep breath. Find your middle point. You don't have to be perfect, you just have to stay balanced. Repeat after me. I live in balance. I walk the middle path. Peace is found in harmony. Plato also believed in the power of the mind to shape reality. He said that thoughts are the seeds of actions. If your thoughts are pure and focused, your actions will follow. So he taught his students to think before they speak and to choose thoughts that build rather than destroy. He used to say, a good decision is based on knowledge, not numbers. That means wisdom matters more than popularity. You must do what is right, even if it's not easy. In your journey of learning English or anything else, this wisdom is precious. Don't compare yourself with others. Don't rush. Focus on your growth. Every new word, every new idea is a step forward. As long as you keep moving, you're winning. Let's say this together. I grow at my own pace. My thoughts shape my actions. I am patient with my progress. Excellent. Plato's influence continued through his students, especially Aristotle. Together, they became the roots of Western philosophy. But even though they sometimes disagreed, Plato always taught that disagreement is not something to fear, it's a doorway to deeper understanding. He said that truth is like a diamond. Each person sees only one side, But when we share our views, the full diamond shines. So, the next time you disagree with someone, try to listen instead of arguing. You might discover a new part of the truth. Let's practice this attitude with these lines. I listen to understand. Different views help me grow. Truth shines through dialogue. That's exactly what Plato wanted for humanity, a world where people talk, think, and grow together instead of fighting. By now, Plato was respected as one of the greatest minds of all time, but he never saw himself as perfect. He remained humble, saying that the more he learned, the more he realized how little he knew, that humility made him truly wise. As this section ends, let's reflect on what we've learned today. Plato taught us to love goodness, to balance our lives, to guide our thoughts wisely, to stay humble, and to let love shape our souls. These are not just lessons from ancient history, they are timeless truths that can make our modern lives richer and calmer. Let's end this part with strong, clear affirmations. Repeat after me. I choose wisdom every day. I fill my mind with light. I am calm, kind, and balanced. My soul grows brighter with every lesson. As the days passed, Plato spent more time in quiet reflection. He often walked alone in the olive groves near the academy, his hands clasped behind his back, his mind drifting between the world of ideas and the world of people. The students would sometimes watch from afar, whispering softly, "He's thinking of new questions again." And indeed, he was. Plato never stopped questioning. Even in his old age, he wanted to understand life more deeply. He wanted to know what makes a person truly happy and what it means to live a good life. One day, a young student ran up to him with great excitement. "Master," the student said, "I've read all your dialogues. I think I finally understand the truth." Plato smiled gently and replied, "My dear student, if you think you have found the whole truth, then you have stopped searching. The journey of wisdom never ends." The student looked confused, but later, he understood. Wisdom is not a final destination, it's a lifelong journey of discovery. Repeat this with me. Learning never ends. Every day teaches me something new. I am a lifelong learner. This is one of the greatest lessons Plato gave to the world. He wanted people to stay curious, to ask, to read, to observe, and to keep their minds open. Even after thousands of years, that lesson is still alive. When you learn English, when you try to understand a new culture, or when you ask questions about life, you are continuing Plato's legacy. There's a story that says, once, one of Plato's students asked, "Teacher, why do we study so much?" Plato picked up a small seed from the ground and said, "This is why. Knowledge is like this seed. If you plant it and care for it, it grows into a tree that gives shade to others." What a beautiful image, isn't it? Every new word you learn, every book you read, every conversation you have, it's a seed. One day, those seeds will grow into wisdom that helps not only you, but also everyone around you. Let's say this together. Knowledge is my seed. Learning helps me grow. I share my wisdom with others. As Plato grew older, he began to reflect on the life he had lived. He remembered his teachers, like Socrates, and his friends who had walked with him through times of peace and times of war. He remembered the students who came to the academy with young, curious hearts and left with minds full of light, and he felt grateful. Gratitude, he believed, is the heart of happiness. When you are thankful, even for small things, the morning light, a kind word, a lesson learned, you open your heart to peace. Plato said that the wise person is not the one who has the most, but the one who needs the least. When you are content, the world feels lighter. Say it with me. I am grateful for what I have. Contentment brings me peace. Gratitude fills my heart with light. Sometimes, Plato would sit with his students and talk about death, but he didn't see it as something to fear. He said that death is like going home after a long journey. The body may rest, but the soul continues to learn. He believed that the soul is eternal, and every life is an opportunity to grow wiser and kinder. This idea gave people comfort and courage. It helped them live fully and face challenges bravely. Think about it. When you know that your actions and thoughts have meaning beyond the moment, you live with greater purpose. You start to care about your choices, your words, and your kindness. You become more aware of how your light touches others. Repeat this. My life has purpose. I live with kindness and wisdom. My soul is strong and eternal. One of Plato's final teachings was about leadership. He believed that the best leaders are those who don't seek power for themselves, but accept it for the good of others. The wise, he said, do not desire power, they desire justice. That's why he imagined a world where philosophers, lovers of wisdom, would be the leaders. Because only those who understand truth can guide others toward it. You can be a leader too, not by ruling others, but by guiding through example. When you speak kindly, when you listen deeply, when you act with honesty, you are a leader of light. You inspire others to rise higher. Say it aloud. I lead by example. Wisdom guides my actions. I am a light for others. In the final years of his life, Plato continued to write and teach. His mind remained sharp, his spirit calm. People came from faraway lands to learn from him, carrying his ideas back to their homes. His words spread across generations, reaching scholars, artists, kings, and dreamers. Even today, when we talk about truth, justice, or the meaning of life, we are speaking in the language of Plato. One evening, as the sky turned golden, Plato sat by the door of his academy and watched his students laughing, debating, and learning. He smiled softly and said, "How beautiful it is to see young minds seeking truth." That was his legacy. Not temples or treasures, but minds that think and hearts that care. If you ever feel lost, remember Plato's path. Ask questions, seek wisdom, choose goodness, keep balance, be kind, learn every day. That is how you build a life that shines. Repeat this with strength and confidence. I am a seeker of truth. I choose goodness over fear. I learn and grow every day. My light guides others. Plato's story reminds us that greatness is not about fame or wealth. It's about the courage to think deeply and live kindly. It's about finding beauty in wisdom and strength in humility. He began as a curious young man and ended as one of the most influential teachers in history. His ideas built the foundation of Western thought, but more than that, they continue to touch hearts and minds around the world. And now, you are part of that story. By listening, learning, and practicing English through this tale, you have become a student of wisdom just like those who once sat in the olive groves of Athens. You are continuing a tradition thousands of years old, one that values thought, kindness, and growth. Let's celebrate this moment together with a final affirmation for this section. I am part of a long journey of wisdom. I think deeply and speak kindly. Every lesson brings me closer to truth. The light of learning lives in me. Plato's light still shines today through books, through ideas, and through people like you who seek to understand and grow. His story shows that even in a world full of noise and conflict, the quiet voice of wisdom can still change hearts. Close your eyes for a moment, take a deep breath, and feel that truth within you. You are not just learning English, you are learning to express wisdom, to share kindness, to connect with the world through words. That's what Plato would have wanted, not memorization, but transformation. Let this be your takeaway for today. The journey of learning is not about perfection. It's about progress, curiosity, and courage. So keep going, keep asking, keep learning, and let your soul, like Plato's, shine brighter each day. In the final years of Plato's life, the world around him was changing fast. Athens had become quieter, yet his spirit of learning and art still glowed brightly. The academy was now filled with students from distant lands, young men who spoke different languages, but shared the same hunger for wisdom. Some came from Egypt, others from Asia Minor, some even from places beyond the Mediterranean. They all gathered around the old philosopher who had turned curiosity into a way of life. Plato's health had grown weaker, but his voice was still full of warmth. Every morning, he would sit in the garden, surrounded by his students. The olive trees gave shade, and the breeze carried the soft sound of birds. His students would bring him fruit, water, and scrolls. He would smile, thank them, and begin his daily discussions. Even as time passed, his passion for teaching never faded. He believed that as long as one could think, one could grow. He told his students, "The greatest victory is not over others, but over yourself." They listened carefully. "Each of you will face doubts, fears, and temptations," he continued. "But if you control your mind, if you guide your thoughts toward goodness, you will always win." He paused and added, "True strength comes from mastering the self. Repeat this with me. I control my thoughts. I choose peace over anger. My greatest victory is over myself." Plato's life was proof of this truth. He had faced disappointments, wars, injustice, and the death of his beloved teacher, Socrates. Yet he never allowed bitterness to rule him. Instead, he turned his pain into wisdom. That's something we can all learn from. When life gets difficult, you can choose to grow instead of giving up. You can transform challenges into lessons. Say it with confidence. I learn from every challenge. I turn pain into power. My struggles make me wiser. As time went on, Plato wrote one of his last dialogues, The Laws. In it, he described how people could live together in peace and fairness. He imagined a city guided by wisdom, where justice ruled instead of greed. He believed that education was the key to such a world that if people learned how to think clearly and act kindly, society could reach harmony. He saw learning as the medicine for ignorance, and he devoted his final years to spreading this message. Think about how powerful that idea is. Education isn't just about memorizing facts, it's about transforming who you are. It's about seeing the world differently, understanding others, and becoming a better human being. Every word you learn in English, every story you hear, every question you ask brings you closer to that transformation. Repeat softly, learning changes me. Education opens my mind. Wisdom leads to peace, even as his body grew tired. Plato's eyes sparkled whenever his students spoke passionately. He once said, "When my students think for themselves, my soul feels young again." To him, teaching was not about giving answers, it was about lighting minds. He believed that inside every person there is a small flame of curiosity, and a good teacher helps that flame grow. You, too, can be that light for others. When you share what you've learned, when you encourage someone to keep going, you continue Plato's mission. The world changes not through grand speeches, but through simple acts of teaching, learning, and kindness. Say it with me, I am a light for others. I share knowledge with kindness. Together we make the world wiser. There is an old story told by his followers. One evening, when Plato was very old, he sat outside, watching the stars. A student asked, "Master, after all your years of learning, what is the greatest truth you have found?" Plato looked at the sky, smiled gently, and said, "That love is the beginning of wisdom." The student was silent for a while, then bowed respectfully. Those words stayed with him forever. Love, the love of truth, of goodness, of people. That was the heart of Plato's philosophy. Without love, knowledge becomes empty. Without love, reason becomes cold. But when love and wisdom walk together, life becomes meaningful. Let's make that truth our own. Repeat slowly, love guides my wisdom. Kindness gives meaning to knowledge. I live and learn with love. A few days before his passing, Plato gathered his students for one last conversation. They asked him what message he wanted to leave behind. He said softly, "Never stop seeking truth. Never stop growing. And never forget that goodness is your true nature." His students wept, but Plato smiled peacefully. He knew his words would live on. He believed that the soul never dies, it simply continues its journey to higher understanding. After his death, the academy continued to flourish for hundreds of years. Generations of thinkers, dreamers, and leaders studied there. Even today, when you open a book about philosophy or question the meaning of life, you are touching the echo of that ancient place. The spirit of the academy lives in every learner who dares to ask, why? So as we come to the end of Plato's story, think of what you have learned from his life. You have learned that wisdom begins with curiosity, that goodness is a choice, that balance brings peace, and that love is the root of all truth. You have learned that the greatest journey is the journey within. And above all, you have learned that learning never ends. Let's celebrate that with a final set of affirmations. I seek truth with an open heart. I live with kindness and courage. My soul shines with wisdom. Learning is my lifelong journey. Now imagine yourself walking through the olive groves of Athens, the sun setting behind the hills, and a soft breeze moving through the leaves. You hear laughter and conversation, the sound of learning. Somewhere in the distance, Plato's voice still echoes, gentle and wise. The greatest thing in life is to become what you truly are. Take a deep breath and repeat one last time. I am becoming my best self. I grow in wisdom every day. My light never fades. And with that, Plato's story continues through you. Every time you learn, every time you speak with clarity and kindness, every time you choose wisdom over anger, you are keeping his spirit alive. You are part of a chain of learners stretching across centuries. From Socrates to Plato, from Plato to Aristotle, and now to you. The light of learning has reached your hands. Keep it bright. Let this be your final reflection. You are not just learning English, you are learning a way of thinking, a way of living, a way of seeing the world through truth and beauty. And as you keep learning, you will find your own voice, your own truth, your own wisdom to share. So walk forward with courage. Keep asking questions. Keep speaking words that lift others. Keep believing in the power of knowledge and love. The world needs more seekers, more thinkers, more hearts like yours. You have reached the end of the unbelievable story of Plato, but your journey has just begun. Repeat after me, one final time. I am wise. I am kind. I am a lifelong learner. My story is just beginning. And so, the light of Plato's wisdom continues through your words, your thoughts, and your heart. Never forget, the real academy is not a building. It's within you. Plato's story does not end with his final breath, nor does his wisdom fade with time. It continues to live in every person who chooses to learn, to question, and to seek truth with an open heart. That is what makes his journey unbelievable, not because he was a genius born in ancient Greece, but because his light still shines in you, in me, and in every learner who dares to think deeply. Let's go back for a moment, not in time, but in spirit. Imagine young Plato once more standing by the sea, watching the sunset. The sky is golden, the waves soft, and his eyes full of wonder. He doesn't yet know he will become one of the greatest thinkers in history. All he knows is that he loves to ask questions. That love, that simple curiosity, is what changed the world. That's how all great journeys begin, with a question, with curiosity, with a spark that says, there's more to learn, and that spark exists in you too. Every time you learn a new English phrase, every time you understand a story, you are following the same light that guided Plato. Repeat with me. Curiosity is my power. I follow the light of learning. Every question brings me closer to truth. Now imagine your own life as a story, one full of lessons, challenges, and discoveries. Maybe you face moments of doubt or fear. Maybe you thought, can I really do this? Can I really improve my English? Can I really grow? Plato's story answers yes. Yes, you can. Because growth doesn't depend on where you start. It depends on your willingness to keep going. Plato taught that the soul's greatest duty is to learn to rise from ignorance to understanding, from darkness to light. Every word you study, every mistake you correct, every effort you make is a small step toward that light. So even when you stumble, even when learning feels slow, remember you are moving forward. Say this proudly. I am growing. Every mistake helps me learn. My progress is my victory. When Plato taught his students, he often said, the beginning is the most important part of the work. He believed that how you start shapes everything that follows. So if you begin your learning with love, patience, and curiosity, you have already won half the battle. The rest is simply practice. Think of your English journey this way. Each new word is a door. Each sentence you understand opens a new world. And every time you use your voice, you make your world bigger. Repeat this softly. My words build my world. I speak with confidence. My voice matters. 1. Of Plato's greatest gifts to humanity was the idea that true education is not about filling the mind, it's about awakening the soul.